Okay. Wanted to update the community on our situation with the coronavirus at the detention center. As of today, the last inmate that tested positive for the virus 2 or 3 weeks ago was placed back into the general population. So as of this moment, we do not have, at least to the extent that we are aware of, any inmates or staff with the coronavirus. Now, we have had a total of 14 inmates and 2 employees who tested positive. I would congratulate the detention staff for the great job they did. We set up a protocol. In fact, if you go Major County Sheriff's Association to their website, you'll see Charleston County Sheriff's Office Detention Center protocols as one of the top resources that they refer jails to. But we set up protocols early, and those individuals that tested positive were folks that we identified as a result of the screening process and testing that we initiated a good long while ago. Actually, when we got the test kits from DHEC, we were able to take those swabs that we had obtained from inmates across the street to the perimeter center and the DHEC there, which enabled us to get the results back very quickly. And then, of course, DHEC provided us with a testing device with a number of kits that we have used. I would say there was, in case you were to ask, there was an article about a problem with the Abbott coronavirus tests and the false negatives. That is a machine that we have, and I would say, from what I am led to believe, problem with those tests are that if you take a swab from an individual, you only have 10 minutes with which to test it. And so we think that where there have been false negatives, it's been a result of specimens that were older than the 10 minutes. With the test right there, with the machine, obviously we're able to take those test swabs and run them through the machine, and within about 15 minutes get the results. So there's a high degree of confidence in the approach that we take, and it's actually the one that's recommended by the manufacturer. We had 14 inmates, like I said, none of whom, as I've been told, had a particularly difficult time with the virus. That none required any hospitalization beyond our infirmary in the detention center. The second thing I would like to pass on, Representative Nancy Mace was responsible for getting legislation passed that prohibited the use of behind the hands or shackling of pregnant females. And I bring that up just to point out that we have been doing that as a matter of policy at the detention center for well over 10 years. We also have had that as a policy for quite a while on the law enforcement side. So while we welcome the legislative support in that regard, the Sheriff's Office has participated in meetings and discussions that go way back that resulted us in changing our policies, like I said, 10 years or so ago. So there is that. Am I missing anything else? Okay. I'll stop there and open it up for questions if you might have some questions.
second or one with confirmed?
You got an idea when the first one started?
The first one was on April 1st.
April 1st.
Was
Yeah.
the first one, and they've kind of spread out.
Yeah. That's when our positive inmates showed up, and that was a result of the testing we did when they came in. That individual, if you may recall, was in sort of a trustee status and was allowed to work all over the jail with meals and different things like that. And we were already testing them in the mornings before they would go to work, and identified a high temperature with the first individual, and I'm told that was April 1st.
And when was the last inmate with confirmed COVID release?
Today. The individual inmate that was the remaining one in quarantine passed 14 days without any symptoms and was placed back in the general population today.
Are you still following all the protocol when an inmate comes in as far as the temperatures and the questions and the things you put in place in April?
Absolutely, and we really, especially if an inmate comes in from a different state, we really get down to specifics as it relates to the screening tests or the questions that we ask there. And we put those, as we do inmates that come in, we'll put those in quarantine, so to speak, give us a little bit of time to see whether or not they are displaying any symptoms.
Do we see any long-term effects from this, these protocols? Do we see them, staying in place for a while at least?
Sure, I think one of the challenges of the coronavirus is that none of us are able to predict how long this is going to remain a problem. From my personal standpoint, I believe that we need to open up as quickly as and safely, but as quickly as possible, because the economic situation, and I'm proud of the state of South Carolina thus far has done, I think, a superlative job in terms of the precautions and the restrictions that have been placed. They're starting to loosen up now, and we'll see how that plays out. I know Saturday at the Isle of Palms in particular, we had a huge number of public come over to the beaches, and there are a whole lot of reasons for that, but I think by Sunday, now it wasn't a perfect day, but it was kind of cloudy, but the numbers had dropped off dramatically from Saturday. So I think there was that initial rush of folks that really wanted to get to the beach, and hopefully we'll see that over time it'll settle back down to sort of normal numbers of folks that come out. But that's the challenge, is not knowing with any degree of certainty. And let me sort of wax political here for a minute. And, as a decision maker in the sheriff's office, I have surrounded myself with folks that will help me, that will complement my thinking. And they provide me information from a detention center perspective, may get one from a legal perspective, may have input from the law enforcement perspective. And then I have to take those and weigh and balance all these considerations to make a decision. It may not be totally what I was advised by the detention center or the law enforcement or the legal, for that matter. Legal may say that I am able to do something, and I may personally feel that I don't feel comfortable doing that. And so the challenge is to take all of the various input that you get, and I think one of the marks of a good leader is that he has folks surrounding him that can provide him input that's accurate and credible. And, I've certainly encouraged people to do that. That's the challenge here, is that you can't, in most cases I've seen, you can't just take what one of your advisors says and apply that across the board. In the present situation, and I should have added the medical in that as well. The medical, that's what their responsibility is. And they're not going to be comfortable moving outside of that lane, so to speak. That's their area of expertise. But when you start talking to them about matters outside of that, they will be quick to tell you, listen, I don't, if they're worth their salt, I don't know anything about that. All I'm telling you is the medical aspect of this, and I believe thus and such. And so you have to take that, but you have to factor that in with a whole host of other considerations that enter into what you finally will do in terms of making a decision. And that's very difficult, and when you got people, for understandable reasons, that are pulling on you from different perspectives, that makes it even more challenging. But insofar as the virus is concerned at the detention center, I believe we have been on top of that. You know, the inmate population, by and large, those folks are not in the best of health anyway. I mean, we have medical challenges just with the general inmate population. Some of them are addicted to drugs and or alcohol, and they go through a certain withdrawal, and they bring in them with them colds and maybe the flu and those sorts of things. So it's a challenge on any given day at the detention center. This obviously amplifies that dramatically. And I think these folks have done a superlative job. We have been prepared at the detention center as well as anybody could be. And part of that preparation has been a long-standing working relationship with DHEC. They know who we are, what we're capable of, and they trust us to do things that they wouldn't necessarily trust in other settings. Those are factors that, you know, they take into consideration. But the detention center here has, I think, done a job that is deserving of recognition because of I'm not going to say the lack of problems, but the lack of serious problems. We have had two employees that tested. Both of them are coming along, but they've had kind of a rough time with it. When the first detention deputy completed his 14 days, then I think he became, although he may not have had any symptoms, there is a period of getting back to where you were before you got to, and recovering and recuperating. The second one has had some issues, but I think they had some medical issues that may have complicated the virus, but they're progressing well and are back at home, and I think they're coming back as well. So we've been very fortunate. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is the department still working with the solicitor's office regarding inmates who might not need to be incarcerated during the pandemic?
We're continuing to do that. One of the things that comes out of this, we were discussing this morning, is that some of the court-related functions we have been handling via video. Now, when that building was opened in 2010, in fact, the building that was opened in 1994 had built into it the capacity of using video in many different contexts. Some of that was opposed by some folks. It was just too new, and they didn't particularly feel comfortable with that. Going through this experience with the coronavirus, I think we have probably won some supporters who see how efficient that is, and not having to transport inmates or defendants to and from the court. that they can accomplish everything they need to accomplish by way of video. And we have video visitation. Attorneys can speak with their clients by video, family members, and now the courts can handle a lot more than they have in the past through video conferencing. And we are continuing to look at individual inmates to make sure that if they fit in the qualifications and the criteria that we've developed, to make sure that they are attended to by the courts. You got a question?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, thank you for covering this. I think it's information that a lot of folks, because of the way the detention centers have been painted around the country, look at this as very important information, and I appreciate you helping us get that information out. Thanks. And be safe and be healthy.